Part 82. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 813. 5th Level Night, Practicing the Common Techniques of the Temple. Human Body Resistance. 6th Level Night, Practicing the Common Techniques of the Temple. Human Body Resistance. 6th Level Night, Practicing Techniques that Focus on the Wind System. Human Body Resistance. A 5th Level Knight, his skills tend to be water-based. Human Body Resistance. Greet collected a lot of messy information and gave it to Moss to organize, make statistics and draw charts. He is only responsible for sitting in front of the center of the Mage Tower, watching the images projected by Moss, and trying to summarize the rules. Human body resistance is related to the dryness of the human body surface, the thickness of the stratum corneum, and the distance through which electric current passes. It is related to whether there is a wound on the body surface and whether the electrode is inserted into the dermis layer. Related to contact voltage. It is related to the individual level and the nature of the practice techniques. Therefore, is there a positive correlation between human body resistance and the energy required for successful defibrillation and cardioversion? What does the correlation between them look like, and what formula can be used to describe it? Gretel took a deep breath. It is now certain that the stronger the night level, the higher the body resistance, and the higher the energy required, but is it true in other directions? Bernard, tie up another pig. Gretel, did you eat the magic pig again today? Cyrilla's shining eyes poked out from behind the door, full of interest. What are you going to eat today? Barbecue. Stewed. Stewed. Or the same thing you made last time, cut the meat into pieces and build it into a pagoda. Cyrilla, that's what I use to practice my magic control. Greet groaned. That time he was busy for 2 whole days and cut countless pieces of meat before he cut out a pagoda that was less than 3 inches high. You expect me to carve up a whole pig this way? Never. Forget it, Sarah, you can help me do the experiment together. After the experiment is completed, we will consider how to eat it, okay? Okay. We have to tie up the pigs, shave them, and poke holes in the pigs. It's so troublesome, I'll wait until I throw a bubble spell on myself to cover up the smell of pigs. Gretel was busy, wetting the pig for a while, drying it for a while, incising the epidermis to expose the dermis, and inserting electrodes under the skin. Create various conditions to test pig body resistance and test the energy required for electric defibrillation. Pity that pig. It was electrocuted to death and then resurrected, and then electrocuted to death, back and forth. It's not that easy to die if you want to. Not to mention Gretel's electric defibrillator is always ready. Bernard is still watching eagerly next to him, ready to perform chest compressions at any time. Sarah had a cure fatal wounds in her hand. With the strength of an adult silver dragon, the cure fatal wounds thrown by it is more effective than the Archbishop of the God of War Temple. And with Cyrilla's spell stock, she could throw 20 or 30 cure fatal wounds a day without blinking an eye. Crack. 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 Oh, it's really dead. It's all burnt. It's okay, it's just the area on the chest where some pork belly is lost, Greet said calmly. You can eat trotters, ribs, tenderloins, legs, backbones, and soup bones. The pig's heart is no longer good, and the liver should be still. Oh, the ribs are actually generally intact. I asked Bernard to chop them into small pieces. A small piece to make a sweet and sour short rib. Okay. Gretel, you can burn it however you want. Sarilla smiled happily. Sweet and sour? She has never tasted this before. Greet conducted experiments for several days in a row, and finally collected enough relevant resistance data from demon pigs, demon cows, demon sheep, various large-sized monsters, and level 4 warriors who were lined up for advancement. Then, he looked at the data, held his head and screamed. Ah! Each one is different, each one is different. Different levels require different defibrillation energy, same level but different energy attributes require different defibrillation energy. For example, a level 3 earth attribute magic pig requires more energy than a level 4 water spirit deer of the same weight. Sure enough, the resistance of earth is strong, and the resistance of water is relatively weak. Although level 4 warriors do not show an obvious energy tendency, there is a vague correlation that also affects the amount of energy. Gretel knows that the more accurate the energy selection, the less harm will be done to the human body and the higher the success rate of treatment. Individual differences are huge. If the dryness of the body surface, whether there are wounds, and whether it touches the dermal layer can be solved by some external means, the energy density inside the human body cannot be solved at all. Relatively speaking, in the previous life, everyone was an ordinary person. When choosing electric shock energy, you only need to consider your weight, which has simplified the problem to the extreme. How do I choose this? Do I have to calculate it separately for each patient every time, or memorize the corresponding form? Gretel scratched his head. If level, occupation, and energy attributes were to be fully considered, the difficulty of casting this spell would be incredibly high. Relying on the healer to manually cast spells, if the calculation is wrong, the magic will change from saving people to killing people, and making Eid machines. This is basically impossible. Greet inhaled deeply and exhaled deeply. It is basically certain that there is a correlation between human body resistance and electric defibrillation and electric cardioversion energy. On top of the basic energy of ordinary people, the stronger the resistance of the human body, the more energy needs to be added. As for other spellcasters besides warriors, especially magicians of various departments, what is the human body resistance? Gretel rolled up his sleeves and first tested himself, Aurora, Master Norwood, Anavia, Leon Carlos, and several apprentices in the Master Tower, and the answers he got. It was so confusing that it made him want to cry. Spellcasters deal with elements on a daily basis, and there is a huge difference between their bodies and those of warriors. So, how do you determine the caster's body resistance? Gretel scratched his head, and scratched his head again. Then, he rushed to the Tower of Babel with a lot of information and found his dear senior sister Philby. "Sister, I need your help." "What's the matter?" "By the way, Gretel, when will the set of instruments you borrowed before be returned?" "Senior sister, the help I am asking you for is related to this. Come on, senior sister, please find a few students to help me measure the human body resistance." Then, he saw his dear senior sister stretching out her arm and rolling up one sleeve. "How to test?" "Come on, let me test it first." There was a crackling sound. This time, Greet really wanted to cry. "Sister, what I want to measure is the human body resistance, not your human body discharge." After much talking, gesturing, and showing all the information to his senior sister, Gretel finally explained why he needed the data. Then, he looked at his senior sister and smiled, raising his voice. "Patty, bring over the research report your group prepared before, along with the data." "Sister, it turns out you have already done it." Greet was overjoyed. He held the research report and flipped through it quickly. I don't know how many times the senior sister's team has been brushed off by them. Almost 8 major factions, up and down, have been touched by them. Well, from apprentice to level 7, 8, and 9 mage. Various factions, magicians who practice different energy attributes, and different human body resistances have all been tortured by them. Sister, this information. Take it, take it. As long as you don't spread it everywhere. I certainly won't. Greet copied a copy of the information and ran away quickly. After thinking about it, I went to several senior brothers, the necromancy system, the transformation system, and any acquaintances I could find, and walked around. If there are any magical beasts used for experiments recently, I won't kill them for the time being. Lend me to do an experiment first, and I promise to cure them. Well, the magic beasts raised by the evocation system are mostly used as targets. The monsters raised by the necromancy and transformation systems are most likely waiting to be skinned and dismantled to make various magic tools. These monsters are all killed without feeling bad. Just borrow it to brush your face. Gretel successfully gathered a group of land mammals, monsters with a weight similar to humans, ranging from levels 1 to 8, with various power levels. They were pressed down one by one, shaved, and the body resistance measured. Shouldn't I be compensated for shaving off some hair? Greet thought silently, inserting needles into the monsters one by one, artificially creating ventricular fibrillation and atrial fibrillation, using direct current defibrillation and electrical cardioversion to save them. Finally, record the energy used and compare it with the energy of the body's resistance. Based on the above data, we can draw a conclusion. For monsters with similar body resistances, the energy required for DC defibrillation and electrical cardioversion is also roughly similar. It can be seen that when the body weight is similar and the heart weight is similar, body resistance is a more critical variable compared to level and energy type. As long as this variable is controlled, DC cardioversion and electrolysis can be correctly selected. Trembling energy. Currently it is speculated that the rough formula of energy should be. Greet kept writing, quickly writing down one line of formula after another. Then, write the formula into the spell configuration, and then add another configuration to the magic of DC cardioversion, electric defibrillation. On-site measurement of human body resistance. Measure the resistance of the human body, plug it into the formula, the spell will automatically adjust, and the appropriate energy will be automatically stimulated. Automatic electric shock rescue, bring back the heartbeat. Perfect. Gretel smiled and put down his pen. On the magic scroll in front of you, there is a gleaming light, which is connected with each other, and has obviously formed a complete magic. He caught another untested demonic wolf, fixed it, shaved it, artificially created ventricular fibrillation, and activated the scroll. Crack. The electrocardiogram, which had just shaken into a messy curve, returned to sinus rhythm under the scroll. Very good. Finish. After several months of diligent research, I finally got the results I wanted most. If it can adapt itself, it can be burned into magic props and placed in various public places. Research and development successful. Perfect. You guys are amazing. Today, 490 monthly votes were cast, and there are still 292 monthly votes left, which brings the total to 3,000 votes. It seems that the author can expect 4,000 votes, and everyone can also expect 6 additional updates. Please continue to vote. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Made a new discovery today. All goods on JD.com can be shipped as long as they are shipped through JD Logistics. The range of things you can buy suddenly expanded greatly. Open the forest, scatter flowers, spin in circles. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 814. Archmage Torg of the Alchemy Guild has been troubled recently. Gretel's magic for rescuing patients, yes, that strangely named magic called direct current defibrillation, electrical cardioversion, and the task of making magic instruments were handed over to him. The production itself is not difficult. According to the spell model, it is engraved into the special magic chip. He has been doing this kind of thing for decades, and he can do it completely with his eyes closed and half asleep. It's just a second-level magic, even if it is made up of several troublesome first-level magics. How difficult can it be? After burning the spell, connect the power source and the trigger device. At most, The layout of the device should be designed to make it easier to use and look more bluffing, so that people who pay for it don't feel bad about paying a high price. Okay, perfect. The only thing imperfect is the magic itself. Master Nordmark generously shared all his research results. One of the important points is that different individuals require different intensity of electric shock energy. Magicians, priests, warriors, and ordinary people are all different. The levels are different, and the energy properties are different. So far, they have shared a thick stack of information and a rough estimate of the required energy, which is extremely complicated. So, how to make this magic instrument something that ordinary people can pick up and use easily? The Archmage is troubled. The Archmage is sad. The Archmage grabbed the few hairs that were left on his forehead and pulled them out one by one. Teacher, I think we can add a handle or keyboard to the outside of the magic device and let the user press it by themselves. Student floated over to offer advice. Then there is an instruction manual. Under what circumstances, which position the handle is pulled, or which number is pressed on the keyboard, the magic device will trigger how high the energy is. I think people who can afford these magic devices will definitely understand. Do you understand the explanation? Good idea. Archmage Tolga glanced at the student coldly. The person fell to the ground and there is no heartbeat. You want the user to panic and check the instructions one by one on the list? The first row for magician, the second row for priest, and the third row for warrior. Find the corresponding grid. And then look for the relevant energy system. What if the manual cannot be found? Then we'll engrave the instructions on the outer wall. Roll. Student A was scolded out in disgrace. Student B cast a silly look at his senior brother, took a step forward, and continued to offer advice. Teacher, I think it's too troublesome to attach instructions. It's so busy on site, and it's easy to make mistakes when checking the forms. It's better to burn the relevant forms into it, and then let people choose. Oh? How to choose? Archmage Tolga reluctantly raised his eyelids. Student B sensed the teacher's interest and was greatly encouraged. Leave a voice in the magic device, instructing them to press the button. Please enter the patient's occupation. If you have no occupation, please press 1. If you are a warrior, please press 2. If you are a mage, please press 3. If you are a priest, please press 4. If you are unknown, please press 5. Oh, next, let's choose step by step, right? Archmage Tolga lazily said. Hello, the warrior profession has been detected. Please enter the profession level. Please press 1 from level 1 to level 3, press 2 from level 4 to level 6, press 3 from level 6 to level 8, and please find a healer above level 8. It seems like it can be made more precise. Anyway, there can be 10 buttons. The student scratched his head. Archmage Tolga's anger surged and he sprayed directly. What's next? Please enter the patient's fighting spirit attribute. Please press 1 for general, press 2 for fire, press 3 for wind, press 4 for water, press 5 for earth, and press 6 for unknown. The patient's heartbeat is gone. Do you think people can still be saved after struggling for so long? This. Student B carefully took a step back, then took another step back. Well, if there is really no hope of salvation, here are the next steps. Hello, because you entered too slowly, the patient's heartbeat has stopped. Please express your condolences, or send a necromantic psychic summons. It feels like after such a change, this prop does not seem to be used to save people, but seems to be specially used to delay the treatment time. Roll. Student B ran away with his head in his arms. Archmage Tolga glanced at the door and sighed silently. Alas, it would be great if this spell could automatically detect the patient's level, occupation, and attributes, automatically match them, automatically retrieve or calculate the results, and then stimulate the corresponding energy. But that's easier said than done? Master Tolga was busy looking through information and papers for half a month. It is not difficult to detect levels, occupations, and attributes. The council has ready-made methods. However, extracting only these three properties and then automatically matching the results. Oh, it's so troublesome. I'm just a great mage of the transformation system. I'm responsible for manufacturing. I'm not responsible for basic research. Someone, let me ask if there are any new results from the Nordmark mage. Immediately some students rushed away. I ran to the mage tower first and received the news that Mage Nordmark was in retreat for research and would not receive guests for the time being. Results. He left no words before retreating, so no one knows. Then I ran to the Thunderhorn and got the news that the Nordmark mage had taken away a batch of information and a batch of warcraft. At present, all the monsters have been returned. Except for each one being wilted and the hair on the chest and abdomen being shaved, there are no serious problems. Then I ran to the temple of the god of war and got the news that the magic spells cast by the Nordmark mage were all done manually. No spell scrolls were made, no simulated magic instruments were made, nothing. So why is he in seclusion? Is there a breakthrough in research, or is there no breakthrough, too depressed, and the pot is broken? In fact, Gretel didn't want to retreat so quickly. The spell has just been modified, and the next task is of course to work hard to promote it and apply for more opportunities for clinical trials. Go write a paper. Go publish it in medical research. Go talk to the great magicians in the medical department, and even try to brush your face and ask them to organize a lecture. Then, give this magic to them and ask them to continue to use it in practice and continue to accumulate data. But there's no rush for this. Greet smelled her sleeves, then her clothes, and wrinkled her nose hard. Although moving pigs, sheep, cattle, and all kinds of monsters these days were all done by invisible servants and Bernard, he still felt like he had a smell on him. When I was working, I had an air bubble on my head, so I couldn't smell anything. After I finished my work, it stinks. There are still 5, 6, 7, or 8 kinds of monsters, some herbivores, some carnivores, all kinds of flavors mixed together. The variety is very rich. Bath. Be sure to take a shower. Moss. Put some water for me. Put some bath salts. I'll come out and take a bath in a minute. He stood under the shower faucet, splashing hard. Well, the water used in the mage tower is directly connected to the elemental pool. The water elemental pool is pure water, and the fire elemental pool is responsible for heating. The hot and cold pipes can be adjusted by themselves. You never have to worry about running out of water, you never have to worry about using too much water today and receiving a high water bill tomorrow. As long as Greet is happy, he can pour water from the top of the mage tower every day or hang a water curtain hole 24 hours a day. Wash, scrub, 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 wash, scrub, scrub. Gretel rushed hard, rubbed himself hard, and rubbed foam into his hair. Fortunately, I didn't grow my hair long, and I followed the laboratory operating rules and wore a lab cap all the time. After rubbing it 3 times, it felt clean. As for dry hair? Withered. Will there be a fork in the future? It doesn't exist. The priest of the god of nature is good at this. The natural breath can nourish the body anytime and anywhere. Greet touched the ends of her hair. Well, with such short hair, it wouldn't have split ends anyway. After washing and scrubbing, I lay down in the bathtub and stretched out. The bathtub was 2 circles larger than the jacuzzi in the previous life. It was enough for Gretel to float in the middle, stretch out her hands and legs in all directions without touching the sides. Greet swayed, swayed. Ah, comfortable. It's very comfortable, and I feel relaxed. Greet closed his eyes and allowed himself to be lifted up by the current and float slowly in the water. There were countless hidden holes in the bath, and the water flowed like 10,000 thin hands, beating, massaging, and kneading his back. Gentle, soft, and appropriate, it is indeed a bath operating method that magicians who love to enjoy have summarized over the years. Greed turned slightly sideways, letting the water flow to the left and right, feeling that his tense muscles were fully relaxed, and he was about to fall asleep. Fell asleep. Fell asleep. Silently, an inexplicable force came across the air, soaked from the top and came down, covering all the limbs and bones. In a daze, Greed was struck by this force and turned over subconsciously. Ah poof. Cough 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 cough. Oops, I forgot I was still in the bathtub and choked on the water. After choking on this mouthful of water, my head actually became much clearer. That power, that inexplicable, familiar, overwhelming power. Is this going to be advanced? Don't even advance in the bath. Gretel jumped out of the bath, grabbed a bathrobe and wrapped it around her, then rushed out. My hair was not combed, the water on my body was not wiped off, and even the slippers on my feet felt like something was wrong. Could it be that I stepped on the wrong left foot and right foot? Do not care. Moss. Call me the elevator. Adjust the elements of the meditation room. He rushed out of the bathroom, quickly tied the belt of his bathrobe, and ran to the elevator. His bedroom and bathroom are on the 9th floor of the Mage Tower, and the meditation room is on the 7th floor. At this juncture, he still has to take the elevator up and down. There is only one elevator in the Mage Tower. Fortunately, he has the highest authority, otherwise, someone else happened to be calling the elevator. This broken elevator just went down from the 8th floor slowly. Then he probably could only jump out of the window, land on the 7th floor, and then jump into the Mage Tower from the 7th floor. Greed cursed and ran wildly. There was a flash of white light in front of my eyes, and I passed by someone, and I instantly felt my body tremble. Hey, Greed, where are you going? Cirella. Don't pull on the straps of my bathrobe. There are actually 20 extra days of updates this month, paving the way. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Seeing that the 3,000 votes are coming soon, everyone should work harder, please. Thanks to @Uchihawkens and @GiaoMo for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to for the desperate reward of 500 starting coins before the collapse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 815. Advancement comes so fast, like a tornado. Gretel said he didn't want to either. It's been less than a year since I advanced to level 7 magician, and I feel like I haven't laid a solid foundation yet. More importantly, there are many 4th level magics that he has not yet thoroughly studied. There are not many. For example, any door. With this spell, he can only teleport within the range that he can see with his naked eyes. He cannot teleport to places that he knows but cannot be seen with his naked eyes. You can only teleport by yourself, you can't bring anyone with you. This is of no use at all. His hospital, outpatient building, research building, obstetrics building, and mage tower are all stacked on top of each other. It cannot be accurately teleported to the door of the ward, into the ward, or into the operating room, and it cannot be teleported to the emergency room with endangered patients. This spell is mostly useless. Another example is Secret Eye. The standard version of the Secret Eye can only pass through a hole with a diameter of 1 inch, and it will get stuck if it is smaller. Gretel found a secret method to shrink it to a diameter of 1 centimeter, but the price is a huge loss of control. Decline. This thing can be moved at will. As long as the mental strength can support it, it can move forward 100 meters per minute without any problem. However, if the miniature version of the secret eye can be inserted into the human body more than 1 foot, it must be pushed with vines. If you want to add a lighting function to it instead of getting another vine to wrap around the light source, sorry, from the moment it is summoned, you have to use the vine to control the direction. Let it move a step and dream. There is also stone skin technique. This spell is also something that the teacher clearly requires to be proficient in. However, Gretel didn't start practicing at all. What a joke. To practice this thing once, you need diamond dust worth 250 gold coins. 250 gold coins. Gold coins. Teacher, do you think I look like 250? I sell a magic treadmill, and the commission from the mage tower is only 200 gold coins. He also has to split it with Master Norwood, and only half of it falls into his pocket. He sold 10 treadmills to the temple of the god of war, and he earned a net profit of 1,000 gold coins. He helped Viscount Seren's son advance once, 3,000 gold coins, and half of it was left as a reserve fund for the mage tower. Teacher, I just paid off my debt. I finally spent a lot of money on the God of War temple to build the hospital mage tower. How can I have the money to learn stone skin technique? It feels like, after advancing from level 7 to level 8, he will be beaten to death by the teacher before he has mastered these spells. What's even more frightening is that after advancing, the teacher will definitely press his head and ask him to study the 5th level spells. However, opportunities for advancement will come when they come. We can only try to hold on, we can't give up, let alone resist. Gretel took a deep breath, closed the door, and immediately fell into deep meditation. The entire mage tower shook slightly under Moss's control. The tower door is closed and the windows on all sides are down. The defense is activated, the magic network is connected, the element pool increases its strength, and the refined and pure elements are poured into the meditation room, slowly increasing the element concentration. The most vivid moment was when Sarah stood at the door of Greet's room for a while, turned around and returned to the dragon's lair on the top of the tower, let go of her true body, and slowly lay down. There was a lot of excitement in the mage tower. Quick! Quick! Use the anti-dragon aura. Put on the magic props that increase mental resistance. As for you, each of you move slower than a turtle. If you blow up another alchemy cauldron for me, get out of the mage tower. Gretel doesn't know about these things and doesn't care. He closed his eyes tightly, accepted the infusion of the will of the world, and guided the energy from across the sky into the core of meditation. Little by little, filling and consolidating one's own spirit. Bones, muscles, blood vessels, heart, nervous system, brain, internal organs, lymphatic immune system, skin and hair. Built with mental power, the light man as the core of meditation was built part by part, one after another, and was only connected together with mental power. But this time, under the will of the world, they seem to have condensed into a whole, flowing and interacting with each other. Greed had a hunch that when he advanced again, this light man would probably be able to live. As for what will happen after living? Take it one step at a time. He has done a lot for the world, and the will of the world will not harm him after all. Gretel relaxed his mind and tried to let the world consciousness fill his meditative core. Until it's full and you can't eat any more, add a few more turns to the conch-shaped shell. 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps, with each additional lap, the efficiency of absorbing energy will be higher, and the protection of one's own spirit will be stronger. Until now, Gretel couldn't even remember how many times the meditation shell had gone around. In short, it has surpassed all the conchs and snails in my impression. To put it bluntly, it is probably only the hawker in the previous life who made oil dumplings and coiled the noodles into circles. How many circles can be compared? Moreover, the conch that Greet dished out was still three-dimensional. Gretel meditated hard and tried to absorb energy until his spirit felt full and he couldn't absorb any more. Even the spells engraved in the spiritual core have been reinforced one by one, and the newly created Eid magic has not been spared. Finally, he completely relaxed his spirit and diffused, infinitely around him. It is said that striving to expand perception and interact with this world is the first step to materialize the world of meditation, and it is also the path that everyone above level 10 must take. So, this time, let's see how far I can sense it. Gretel allowed his spirit to be carried by the will of the world, constantly rising, rising, rising infinitely. When I advanced last time, the scene I saw appeared again. Extremely strong energy gathered into a ball, and there seemed to be clouds hanging down from the sky, like magnetic needles, attracted by it. The earth, the waves, the mountains, the stars, the endless light. Looking down from the top, it's like the world light distribution map Gretel saw online in his previous life. In every place where the lights are dense, stable, and powerful, the cloud pillars hanging high in the sky are particularly thick, and the flow speed seems to be particularly fast. Falling down, pouring, and spreading all over the earth. So what are these clouds? Are they scattered on the earth, good or bad for the earth and the world? Gretel tried to enlarge his consciousness and followed a wisp of cloud to see. Getting closer, the clouds hanging down from the sky rotated rapidly like a waterspout at first, their power was extremely concentrated, and then they gradually loosened up. The further down you go, the more the clouds disperse. From a distance, the clouds are steaming and the clouds are bright, while from a close distance, the rain is pouring down one by one. Where there are many lights, the raindrops are denser, and where there are less lights, the raindrops are sparse. Gretel once again expanded his perception and followed a wisp of clouds that poured into the ocean far away. As he watched, beneath the clouds, a group of light spots in the sea flickered for a few times and suddenly dispersed. The stars kept extinguishing, and soon it fell into complete darkness. And the clouds high in the sky dispersed aimlessly and disappeared. Great! What's happening here? What are these disappearing points of light? Is it a volcano on an island? A group of particularly spiritual big fish? Or, a person? Is it a ship that has just capsized, and a crew that has just been killed? Greet's spirit was slightly shaken, and in an instant, he was ejected from his meditative state. He took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and looked down at his hands. Has the advancement been successful? Is this level 8? Looking up, I saw that 3 days had passed since the date displayed on the wall of the meditation room. He lowered his head and touched his abdomen. He had obviously not eaten yet, but there was no feeling of hunger in his stomach. His whole body felt lazy, and every cell was telling that he was satisfied. Concentrate slightly. Moss. Test my mental power. Okay, boss. Talling responded. Greet concentrated her energy and struck the crystal pillar on the wall. Soon, the color of the crystal pillar began to change. Red, orange, and yellow all flashed and settled on the green section. The green is getting thicker and thicker, gradually developing towards the verdant direction, infinitely close to cyan. 125, 131, 138, 145, 167. Greet read silently. Very good, each section has a corresponding color and value. Green corresponds to level 7 and level 8, 1 to 50 approximately corresponds to level 7, and 51 to 100 approximately corresponds to level 8. The last time he tested, the reading had not exceeded 100, but this time it had exceeded that much. Generally speaking, if it exceeds 100, it means that you have reached the threshold for advancing from level 8 to level 9. At the very least, you have enough mental power. But other conditions are much worse. For example, master enough 4th level magic. For example, Try to research, analyze, and master a certain 5th level magic. For another example, if you want to research a new magic, level 5 is the best. Even if it is not possible, it should be novel and practical enough. For another example. Either way, sufficient resources are required. And if you want enough resources, you have to have a high enough status. Greed thought silently. After becoming an 8th level mage, he must remember to brush the badge. Or go a quarter of an hour early during the weekly meeting. There is a special place in the Tower of Babel to brush badges. And, to summarize, all the research points so far. I was a 5th level arcanist before. Now, is it enough for a 6th level magician? Can I get more of the monthly routine allocation? Greed stood up and stretched hard. You can do these things slowly, or put them until tomorrow. The most important thing right now is. He opened the door to the meditation room. Almost the next moment, a figure appeared at the door out of thin air, and a crisp and cheerful voice rang. Gretel, you finally came out? How is the situation now? Wow, the advancement was successful. Great. We want to celebrate. Have a party. Eat delicious food. Sarala, how long have you been staring at the secret eye at the door? Gretel sighed softly. Sarala rushed forward and pushed her out hard, so she had no choice but to walk, mumbling and swaying. It's obviously to celebrate my advancement. Why do you still need me to cook at the banquet? 3,000 words. Another update completed. And you guys are so awesome, you really got over 3,000 votes. Next month, we will complete an additional update with a 10,000 reward and an additional update with a 4-month ticket. A total of 5 updates will be added. From May 1st to May 5th, everyone will be able to read 6,000 words every day. Remember to vote for me tomorrow with all your guaranteed monthly votes. Double monthly votes from the 1st to the 7th, everyone works hard to vote, there will be extra updates. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 817. Gretel successfully advanced and was very proud of himself. While he was celebrating with his friends, there was one person who was living a miserable life. The Cult of Glory, Inquisition, Vice President of Lucerne. Nearly a year ago, the deputy referee was ordered to die by the chief referee. If he can't kill anyone, he will go there himself. Since then, he has been in a state of life and death. Send someone over to inquire about the news, and the target has returned to Nevis. Send people over to assassinate, but nothing will happen. If you want to send a higher level killer, check your wallet and bribe one more, you will become a pauper. And what future will a deputy chief referee who has become a pauper have in the Inquisition and the glorious Holy See? The best outcome is to be marginalized and transferred to an ordinary casual job in a rural area, and to provide for retirement from now on. The worst outcome is. In the secret cells of the Inquisition, it is not that there are no former members of the Inquisition, or even high-level officials. After arresting so many people and killing so many people, do you really think there is no backlash? The deputy referee of Lucerne counted and counted his savings. Finally, he gritted his teeth and made a decision that went against his ancestors. He wants to go to the Kingdom of Kent in person. Of course, not to assassinate the target personally. What are you thinking about? His professional level is only level 13, which is nothing in Nevis City. He is still a priest, not a knight. Without the support of a warrior, how can it be so easy to kill someone? The Carlyle who faced him before was already level 14. In this regard, he is still relatively weak among the disciples of the Lord of Thunder. That Gret Nordmark is in Nevis, in his mage tower, under the protection of the Lord of Thunder. How can he be so easy to kill? But the Kingdom of Kent still has to go. When we arrived at the Kingdom of Kent, the sky was high and the holy city was far away, so it was not easy for the power of the glory god religion to reach out. Instead of going to Nevis, he would find a small place to live in the surrounding areas and patiently wait for the opportunity. If you really can't find the opportunity and the Holy See is pressing hard, the worst possible outcome is to escape to the New World. Although life is a little harder, although enjoyment is less, although there are uncivilized natives everywhere you look around. But you can live. Walking deeper into the land, in the vast new continent, it is not easy for the Holy See to reach out, and it is not easy for those magicians and pagans to find him. If he were to find an indigenous tribe at random, he would definitely be offered up as a 13th level priest. The deputy referee of Lucerne disguised himself and hid in a small town in the county next to Nevis. He read the newspaper every day and often inquired about news. So he knew that Gret Nordmark had advanced to level 7 mage soon after returning to Nevis. Then he knew that Gretel Nordmark had produced a bunch of results again. So he knew that Gretel Nordmark and the medical branch, Black Crow Swamp, and many magicians were working together to do research. Moreover, this goal is too autistic. The deputy referee of Lucerne worked hard to find out that he had been in Nevis for 6 years, but he had only left 3 times. 3 times. 2 parliamentary missions, 1 return home, and the rest of the time spent in Nevis doing research. To do parliamentary tasks, you must have a large group of guards. I return home very quickly. The 8th level silver moon deer can travel hundreds of miles a day with its long legs, and I can't even catch up. Look at other magicians and other professionals. If there are monsters here, they will fight and catch them. If there are strange celestial phenomena there, they will rush over to see them. They are everywhere in mountains, forests, swamps, and deserts. Such a target is so easy to kill. Kill a few and walk away, and no one will know about it for half a year. The deputy chief judge of Lucerne waited and waited. Finally, when he arrived at the Oak Grove Medical Clinic, there was news about a mage tower. Now, okay, I have a mage tower where I live, and a mage tower where I work. This is simply an iron wall. There is a huge difference in how difficult it is to kill a magician who is in the wizard's tower and a magician who is not in the wizard's tower. Moreover, even if the magician relaxes his vigilance, the magic tower can automatically scan and alert those who enter the envelope, especially high-level professionals. Once the magician is attacked, the support, defense, and attack of the magician tower will automatically follow. There is no hope. Gotta go. The deputy referee of Lucerne gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He disguised himself again and went around the kingdom of Kent, getting rid of the Holy See's eyes. Then, he purchased a batch of salt and directly found a ship to the New World in the name of a small businessman. Gone, gone. I don't care about the targeted elimination of targets or go there in person if you can't kill anyone anymore. Life is the most important, living is the most important, save your life and you will always have a chance in the future. At most, the target can't always stay in Nevis, right? You always have to come out to practice, right? So many magicians are coming to the New World, maybe he will come too one day, right? Maybe then, in the vast new continent, he will be able to meet the opponent and kill him. The Holy See's order was to go there in person and kill him. It did not say where to kill him, nor did it specify when to kill him. The deputy referee of Lucerne huddled in a narrow cabin and swayed on the sea for nearly a month before finally swaying to the New World. Jumped off the boat, rubbed his eyes. Ouch. Bad luck. High up in the harbor, the pilot lighthouse stands majestically, overlooking the bottom, and the light can be seen from more than 10 miles away. It is also a mage tower. But there's nothing we can do about it. The destination of the ship that the deputy magistrate of Lucerne was looking for was originally the settlement established by the Magic Council in the middle of the northern continent. Without the mage tower, that would be impossible. This small town named Waltham was built on a natural deep water harbor. A very small part of the residents are magicians and warriors from the parliament, as well as businessmen, clerks, etc., the other half live in the Kingdom of Kent and have no means of living. Poor people who sold their bodies for money and were hired to work in the New World. There are also more than half of the surrounding indigenous people, coming and going, bustling, carrying a variety of local specialties, whole bison hides, beef tendons, dried and cured wild boar meat, rich beaver skins, pearls of different sizes, as well as various medicinal materials and warcraft materials. Same thing, sell to these tall outsiders with white skin, golden brown, brown and red hair, and then exchange them for weapons and healing potions. The whole of Waltham, the port area, and the trading area were abuzz with noise. As for why they didn't start a fight, Lucerne only walked 3 streets before he saw a mage tower standing at the end of the street from a distance. He turned around and immediately changed direction. After passing 2 intersections, he saw another mage tower. The twin towers face each other far away, forming a triangle with the port lighthouse. Lucerne was frightened, tried his best to contain all his aura, and walked out along the roadside. When I turned an intersection, I saw a group of soldiers walking from the opposite side, talking and laughing, carrying weapons. Looking up again, oh, the temple of the god of war. Next, he saw the temple of the spring goddess and a lush oak tree. The crown of the tree spread outwards, covering half an acre of ground. The deputy referee of Lucerne said that there was no fluctuation in his heart at all. Anyway, let's go. Go quickly. Go inland, out of reach of those pagans who play with magic. The deputy referee of Lucerne sold 2 bags of salt at the port, purchased a batch of daily necessities, and hired a carriage to drive inland. He rushed to an indigenous tribe and sold a batch of goods. He rushed to another indigenous tribe and sold another batch of goods. Before I knew it, I had passed 7 or 8 tribes, and it was a full month's journey from the interior. Finally, he found a small tribe to live in seclusion near the Thunder Lake, 2 days away from the lake shore. The reason why it is called Thunder Lake is because the local indigenous people have an old legend that if you walk northeast along the shore of the lake for 5 days and 5 nights, you will reach the end of the lake and then keep going north, and you will come to a high cliff. The waterfalls are rushing and thundering all day long. It is said that there was once a warrior whose bride was taken away by the chief and he himself was driven out of the tribe. The warrior fought to the death, came to the place where the thunder thundered, and jumped down. He was swept into the lake by huge waves, but survived with unparalleled courage and perseverance, and became an extremely powerful warrior. He returned to the tribe, successfully killed the chief, took back his bride, and lived happily with his lover ever since. On the side of Thunder Falls, there is a narrow and elegant white waterfall, which is the veil worn by the bride. Lucerne did not want to hear a word of these words. Even though he was hundreds of miles away, he could feel the gathering of elements that frightened him from the direction pointed by the natives. The extremely powerful water element, and maybe the thunder element. He would not be surprised if that place was occupied by powerful high-level monsters. He would definitely not be surprised if there was a mage tower standing there. So, be quiet, just be quiet. Stay away, stay calm, and go find out the news when you have time. The deputy referee of Lucerne lived in seclusion as he wished. As a small businessman with some skills in healing, he brought much needed supplies to the indigenous tribes and cured 2 patients. He was immediately enthusiastically retained by them. This small tribe of less than 500 people had just lost its healer. The natives gave up the house where the former elder lived, refurbished all the straw mats inside, and each household contributed their treasured animal skins. He promised that as long as he was willing to stay and treat the people of the tribe would be responsible for all the food and drink. Sounds good. However, the Lucerne deputy referee only stayed for 3 days and felt that life was worse than death. How long has it been since this shabby house was cleaned? There was an old stench that made him want to die all the time. This shabby house doesn't even have a sewer. To go to the toilet, You have to brave the wind and snow and run into the wild. He asked the natives to get him a barrel and send someone to pour it out, but they actually told him that there was no such rule. What does this poor tribe eat? The suspicious grain cakes were either mixed with stones or sand, the fruit wine had an extremely weak taste and was a little sour. The surface of the meat that has been dried for who knows how long is completely black. Just thinking about surviving, is it too much to lower your living standard to this level? Otherwise, why not take a risk and go deeper inland to find a larger tribe? But the living standards of the indigenous people are just like this. Should we live in the small town of Waltham? Or maybe just go back to the kingdom of Kent? Lucerne stirred the tubers and grains of unknown origin in the wooden bowl, thinking deeply. Before he could come to a conclusion, the door was pushed open, and a dozen soldiers filed in and saluted him. "Elder, we need your wisdom to guide us, famine is coming." "What, even this little thing, will I not be able to eat enough in the future?" "During the double monthly voting period from May 1st to 7th, everyone should try to vote for me. I saved 2,000 votes this month, and there are still 2 chapters to be updated. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 818. Is the Great Famine coming soon? The deputy referee of Lucerne was stunned. He has no idea at all. He didn't get any news. Over the past year, he has been excluded from the Holy See's information network. Apart from urging him to complete the task quickly, no one has sent him any news in this regard. "Yes, respected healer, please come out and take a look." The warrior leader bowed and saluted. He was draped in a soft deerskin robe, holes were made on the edge with stone needles, and then tied up with strands of deer sinew smashed into strands. That roughness, that simplicity, that pungent smell, the Lucerne deputy referee only took one look at it and wanted to turn away. It's so annoying. Not only does it irritate your eyes, but it also irritates your nose. That deerskin robe, do you know what they use to tan it? It's urine. Take a basin of urine, leave it in a warm place for 3 or 4 days, put it in a room filled with stinking odor, and then soak the deerskin in it. Soak, turn, scrape away the fat and fascia inside, and then stretch hard. He accidentally saw it, and then he kept walking around the leather robe maker. The problem is that every household here wears clothes hunted by men and cut and tanned by women. As long as he comes back from hunting once, no matter where he goes in the tribe, he cannot escape. When he was in the Holy See, he always wore silk robes. The color is a little off, the embroidered pattern is just a little wrong, and it's not worthy of being worn by him. Maybe, he should find a bigger tribe. The deputy referee of Lucerne complained silently, followed the warrior leader out and entered the tribal gathering hall. It was more like a dark cave than a hall. The central fire pit was so smoked that it had been used for an unknown period of time. At the bottom of the cave, on a stone wall, there are countless lines drawn horizontally and vertically. Lucerne squinted his eyes for a while and finally recognized that it was painted with ochre powder mixed with the blood of warcraft. This area may be a mountain, that circle may be a lake, and this winding one may be a small river? Dear healer, look, the warrior leader raised his torch and illuminated the mess on the stone wall. In previous years, when the new moon rose, the deer would come to this place to graze. Now that the moon is almost full, the deer still haven't come back, and the grass buds in these places have only just turned green. It hasn't grown to half a foot tall yet. The weather is also colder than in previous years, and the time for the snow to melt and the water to freeze is much later than in previous years. Last summer, those who could summon fire and frost passed by here. The great famine we once talked about seemed to be really coming. The deputy referee of Lucerne was a little confused. He hasn't farmed the land in many years. No, it should be said that since he entered the Holy See and became a servant of the Lord of Glory, he has never farmed the land himself. The weather is cold and the grass grows late, which is indeed not a good sign, but how big will this famine be? Maybe the ascetics could tell. After all, many of them, including the leader of the ascetic monks in the Glory Holy City, had to go to the ground every day. As for himself, maybe he should switch to a bigger tribe. Although larger tribes are more likely to be discovered by the pagans. Is the great famine really coming? Elder Brock, wearing a feather cloak and a feather crown, sat quietly by the fire pit. He shook his palms, sprinkled a handful of spices into the fire, and closed his eyes quietly. Around him, several disciples were beating leather drums, waving bells, chanting loudly, and beating hard. With the help of the disciples, inspired by chants and spices, a ray of spirituality in the elder rose higher and higher, higher and higher. In the inexplicable void, try your best to unfold, hover, and search. The spirit of the condor told me that the sky was extremely dark and depressing after a long, long time. Elder Brock opened his eyes and was sweating profusely. He said in a hoarse voice slowly, "The earth is cold and lifeless." The spirit of the condor said that it has never, ever seen such a desolate land. The warning sent by our friends last year is true. The great famine is indeed coming. Then, Elder, what should we do? Should we organize the best warriors and go hunting far away? There is not enough food in the tribe. Elder Brock looked around slowly. The icy cold wind blew all the way from the pole to the north. From the kingdom of Kent, to the Herman Mountains, to the Great Wasteland, to the Carolingian kingdom and the Rhine kingdom on the mainland. From the most experienced farmers to the superior lords, when they felt that winter was extraordinarily long and spring came too late, they all discovered something was wrong. Quick! Quick! Raise the fence! Around the dwarf royal court, the royal knights helped their fellow tribesmen and the barbarians living in the village to drive goats into the fence. Relying on his height, the barbarian used a sledgehammer to raise the fence one circle, and then another. Finally, everyone put on thick gloves and pulled the thorny tree vines around the entire fence. Spring came very late this year. Blue sheep have not come up the mountain for a long time, and snow leopards are so hungry that they come down to hunt. If the fence is not done, all the big livestock will be ruined. But what if there's not enough feed? The servants of the God of Nature taught us a way to store fodder. We stored a lot of fodder last year, and it's not rotten yet. It should be enough for a month. In a month, the grass will grow no matter what. The dwarves checked the wheat in the warehouse, worked hard to gather the sheep, and tried to protect the precious food in the future. The barbarians ran among the mountains and forests, rowed boats in streams and offshore, and tried their best to hunt and fish. Hey, luckily I bought a lot of cheap salt last year. Salting the wild animals and fish should last a long time. No matter what, there will always be fish in the rivers and seas. The Netherlands, who also make a living by fishing, are not in such a good mood. Although fishing provides a large amount of meat, the fishing industry is also supported by shipbuilding, barrel hoops, sail repair, and net weaving. In this way, the catch can be sent to other cities, or even other countries, for sale in exchange for supplies and money that the Dutch need. No wonder the Kingdom of Kent bought so many fish from us last year. The Duke of the Netherlands flipped through the report given by the clerk, feeling very unhappy. Those pagans were generous in giving money and supplies. In particular, the supply of salt doubled and doubled from the previous days. Without salt, the catch cannot be processed and barreled on site at sea. Without salt, the catch cannot be sold hundreds of miles away. If I had known that the famine was coming so violently, I should have raised the price. The Duke stroked his raised mustache and murmured softly. Next to him, the secretary who delivered the report, who was also his most trusted think tank, asked for instructions in a low voice. Then, sir, should we raise the price to the Kingdom of Kent this year? Have we made a deal with them? The prince glanced sideways. The secretary immediately bowed. No, sir. Your Majesty is asking, should we strictly control the fishermen and make them abide by the laws of the territory? The Duke pressed down the tip of his raised beard, let it go up, pressed it down again, and let it go up again. After tossing for several rounds in a row, he muttered. What good products are there recently? Several new things appeared on the manifest. The clerk flipped through the piles of reports and deftly pulled out a pamphlet. He opened it, flicked it with his fingertips, and reached the dog-eared page. The fertilizer used to cultivate magic plants is said to be accurately prepared by measuring the soil using their latest method. Fresh Surge Potion, using Dragon's Breath moss as the main potion, can greatly improve the possibility of water warriors advancing. Direct current defibrillation, et. What? The Duke of the Netherlands took the book from the clerk's hand and looked at it. With the Duke's knowledge of magic props, he read it twice before he stumbled through the term. Direct current defibrillation and cardioversion devices can, to a certain extent, rescue warriors who have failed to be seriously injured and whose hearts have stopped during the process of rescuing advanced knights. They can also rescue certain patients who are seriously ill, seriously injured, and whose hearts have stopped. What is this thing? He lowered his head and took a closer look. There was a line of small words written at the bottom of the manifest. Although the handwriting is small, it was specially traced with silver powder as if it were not visible to others. See related content in the January issue of Medical Research. Duke of the Netherlands. Is it now fashionable for magicians to write papers as a way to promote their products? In any case, for the sake of these fresh goods, the Duke of the Netherlands did not tighten trade with the Kingdom of Kent. Being able to save your own warriors without relying on healing skills or the Holy Sea of Glory, more of the same, better of the same. As for what the Holy Sea thinks. Anyway, the fishermen sailed their boats on the sea. How did he know where they were going? Some people care about famine, and some people don't care much about famine. 700 miles south of the capital of the Netherlands, the capital of the Kingdom of Brolin, a wedding car pulled by 6 white horses was slowly driving through the streets of the royal capital towards the main entrance of the palace. On the left and right, knights from the Kingdom of Boi, one of the 7 princes of the Kingdom of Rhine, wearing straight royal blue woolen uniforms and ship-shaped military caps on their heads, guarding their princess's motorcade. In front and behind, knights from the Kingdom of Brolin, wearing bright red woolen uniforms with white ostrich feathers on their high hats, cleared the way for the Queen's motorcade and cut off the rear. The hands wearing white gloves kept waving petals and candies to both sides. In the motorcade, there were even more priests sent by the glorious Holy See, who kept sending out little bits of light, decorating the Queen's carriage. On both sides of the wide road, some well-dressed, some neatly dressed, or some ragged citizens were packed out to welcome their new queen. The husband held his wife, and the parents held their children, and stood on tiptoe as they passed the sentry who stood erect and held a spear. Some people tried to take a look at the new queen's face through the fluttering gauze curtains. Some people smiled and leaned over to pick up the candies, putting them in their pockets with great care, ready to take them back to share with their families. And some. Wow! On the side of the road, a little girl about 3 or 4 years old with blonde curly hair burst into tears. The woman next to her quickly hugged her, took a few steps back, and carefully bumped her in her arms. Eva, what's wrong? Wow, wow! The little girl's thin face wrinkled up. After a while, he forcefully spit out the petals from his mouth. This flower is so bitter, Mom, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. With just these words, the woman holding her held her daughter in her arms, buried her head on her shoulder, and used her daughter's ragged clothes to cover her tears. Mom knows, go back and I'll make you food when you get back. She also didn't know why the king charged her family a wedding tax of 2 copper coins each when they got married. She also didn't know why the priests would rather decorate the carriage with their light than spread the light to the sick and poor people. She didn't know why she had promised that there would be candies, but on their way there, they could only pick up bitter petals. Ask for a guaranteed monthly pass during the double period. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 819. The wedding of King Brolin and Princess of the Kingdom of Boi was the most luxurious and most talked about wedding in mainland China for a century. At the wedding, all the roads from the palace to the church were covered with carpets, with wooden boards underneath the carpets. In order to show respect to the Lord of Glory, even the king must walk to the church in person, and these floors and carpets ensure that the nobles' shoes, clothes, and skirts will not be stained with the slightest trace of dirt. King Charles II of Brolin walked slowly in front, wearing a dress fully embroidered with magical runes in mithril silk and inlaid with diamonds to provide magical energy. Behind the king, the young queen, Princess Thalia from the Kingdom of Boi, wore a dress embroidered with silver thread and brocade. 2 noble ladies held up the skirt for her and walked behind the king. The skirt of the queen's dress is studded with pearls the size of rice grains, adding a layer of aqua halo to the floor-length dress. Obviously, the power flowing through this dress, which was only worn once at the wedding and then shelved forever, was no less powerful than the king's wedding dress. After the wedding, the chief steward of the Kingdom of Brolin led 36 palace attendants at the level of trainee knights, and 12 officers of honor holding gold and silver scepters, who were at least knights, escorting the food delivery team into the palace. A large number of delicacies that the people of the kingdom had never dreamed of appeared in rows and rows at the banquet after the wedding. The monster moonlight ray caught in the Black Sea can possess the power of soft moonlight after one bite. Only a piece of meat from the gills is taken, and the rest is used to reward the servant. The colorful magical birds captured in the New World are plucked and steamed, and then the feathers are inserted back one by one and served to the dining table vividly. 12 gold plates with a diameter of 3 feet were filled with castles made of white sugar. The city walls were covered with gold foil, and various candies were used to shape vivid flowers, plants, birds, and animals. The golden dates, which are only produced deep in the Orc Kingdom, will automatically flow with honey when touched. The whole plate is placed on the long table, allowing all the guests to enjoy it as they please. Of course, there is an unlimited supply of chickens and ducks that were cultivated in the palace pasture and grew up eating spices and medicines, as well as cattle and sheep that grew up eating magic plants. As long as the guests are willing, they can eat until they vomit. Only the nobles with the most noble status and the most trust of the king are qualified to attend the king's wedding. Most of the low-level nobles and knights could only stand in the square of the palace, waiting for the king and the queen to appear on the balcony, smiling and waving to them. Ah, she is so beautiful. Platinum hair. Rose-colored smile. As expected of the princess closest to the glory. She saw me. She saw me. Ah, I think my heart is drunk. From today on, I will dedicate everything to the beautiful queen. On the balcony, flowers, candies, and gold coins rained down as the king and queen smiled and waved. Dots of holy light hovered over the palace. That was the blessing from the Glory Holy See, the archbishop stationed in the royal capital, personally for the king and queen. And these blessings were quickly overwhelmed. At the end of the dinner, the bright music of the clarinet sounded in the palace, followed by a large ensemble of various musical instruments. After 3 hymns in praise of the Lord of Glory, lively dance music began, and the dance lasted all night long. In the kingdom square and on the city streets, the citizens crowded together could not see all this. They raised their heads greedily and looked at the brilliant and fleeting fireworks blooming in the night sky. The fireworks set off for the king's wedding are colorful and varied. The golden lily, the emblem of the Brolin royal family, the blue cornflower, the emblem of the Rhine kingdom, the peacock with its tail feathers spread, the mermaid with splashing water drops. The fireworks rising high even covered up the holy light that represented blessings shed by the glorious Holy See. In a back alley, under the wall, a hungry little girl raised her palms to try to catch a small falling firework. "It's so beautiful, I really want to." This extravagant wedding, with its attendant banquets, balls, fireworks, and subsequent month-long dances and performances, was not without its cost. According to statistics from the kingdom's finance minister, this sum alone has cost the kingdom a full 20 years of fiscal revenue. Of course, the huge cost of the wedding was, as always, financed by debt from businessmen. The young new king and the queen mother who wanted to show off her national power all had the same attitude towards this huge debt. Then raise taxes. Anyway, the taxes from farmers, citizens, and businessmen will never be collected, right? Gretel didn't know anything about such a grand wedding, and even if he knew, he wouldn't care. No matter how grand the wedding is, can he be allowed to see it? Even if you arrive at the scene and see it, is there a good location? Are there any seats with the best view? Is there a lighting with the best angle that can best highlight the actor's beauty? Is there a camera that keeps switching to capture every detail of the scene? If he didn't have any of these, he might as well recall the movies he watched in his previous life. Relying on the memory bonus brought by time travel, close your eyes and you will have everything. Oh, except maybe jewelry. However, do the Carolingian kings and queens have any jewelry that is luxurious enough to surpass the jewelry collection of Sarira? After all, it was impossible for Sarala's treasures to belong to him, but he could look at them and touch them whenever he wanted. You can hold it in your hand and play with it at close range, or you can immerse yourself in your mental power to sense the internal structure, whatever you want. So now, Gretel is tireless and still immersed in his fields of medicine and magic. The biggest task at present is to deal with the child with scoliosis on the other side of the strait. So far, he has become very proficient in making animal models of scoliosis in dogs. However, the success rate of subsequent corrective surgeries has remained very stable. Stable at 0%. Smile. You can use scissors to cut, files to file, and guide growth to guide growth, so that the bent bones can be reset. However, he has never been able to protect the nerves that radiate through the spine to the surroundings 100%. If you are less lucky, the dog will go into shock while doing it, die, and cannot be saved. If you are more lucky, the dog will survive until the end of the exercise, and then it will be paralyzed. Ah, spinal surgery, goddess, it's so difficult. Gretel held his head and groaned. He swayed around with his eyes closed for a while before standing upright again. Wash your hands, change the isolation gown, and change the surgical instruments. Bring the dog over again, and I will do the surgery again. Sarira, put on the microscope for me. I can't believe that even after magnifying it 10 times, I still can't perform this surgery. The skin is opened, the muscles are retracted, and the nerve roots are exposed. Greet concentrated on it, using the nerve hook in his left hand and the microscopic forceps in his right hand to expose it bit by bit. The surgical instruments transformed by the mage's hand slide along the outer edge of the nerve sheath, deforming, trying hard not to cause any harm. Oops, shaking again. He hung his head in frustration. The operations of neurosurgery are much more delicate than those of general surgery. A slight twitch of a finger, which may not be visible to the naked eye, can move from one side of the lens to the other under a microscope. Before he could react or restrain himself, the irreversible consequences had already been caused. Gretel took a deep breath and tried to hold his breath to minimize the trembling of his hands. Hold it, hold it. Forward, forward, a little further forward, until you reach the nerve sheath, don't move. He felt to himself that the dangling fingers had not moved at all, but under the microscope, the tip of the tweezers seemed to be suffering from epilepsy, jumping from west to east, and then from east to west. Gretel could almost imagine that every tremor left a scar on the delicate nerves that were difficult to discern with the naked eye. What if you don't use your hands? Not using hands, just using mental power to move these surgical instruments to protect the tissues that need to be protected? Gretel loosened his fingers, concentrated his energy, and manipulated the mage's hand forward. Deep, protect, pull. Snapped. Under the microscope, a nerve was stretched to its longest length, and then broke apart like a rubber band, revealing countless thin nerve filaments inside. Greet closed her eyes in pain. His level of fine manipulation of mental power is not good yet, in other words, he trusts his hands more than his mental power. In fact, many great mages of the transformation system are the same. When drawing scroll lines or carving magic circles, they have to use their own hands to make their bodies work harder. Gretel had a conversation with the vice president of the Alchemy Guild and had a deep understanding of this point. Mental strength training does not happen overnight. There may be a way to exercise the physical body. At least Greet knew that as his muscle strength became stronger, his control over fine operations would improve and he would not suddenly tremble while working. This means that many surgeons, regardless of their specific discipline, are either lifting weights after get off work or on the way to lifting weights. It won't work if I don't lift it. I can't do the surgery if I don't lift it. He gave himself a barbarian power, held the microscope tweezers, and approached the neural tissue again. This time it turned out to be much better, and the amplitude of the tremors shrank sharply, only about 1/3 of its original size. Relying on such precision, Greet is confident that he can reduce surgical injuries by half, no, maybe 60%. He concentrated on holding his breath and continued. Pull, protect, pull again, protect again, change wrong ears, bite off part of the vertebral body, guide bone growth, then process the next vertebra. Bang bang. It's over, the spell has failed, and my hands are shaking again. By the way, how long does the power of the barbarian bull last? It seems, it's 1 minute/level? Greet did the math, he was now a level 8 mage, and using the power of the bull once only lasted 8 minutes. It currently takes 4 hours to complete an operation, and he needs to brush himself. 30 times of bull power? Not to mention having to pay attention to when the spell will expire at all times, this method of handling it is just stupid. Gretel bravely finished processing the vertebra, and with a wave of his hand, the dark gold skeleton came on stage. However, his control ability, transmitted through the dark gold skeleton, has to be somewhat compromised. Once such a discount is applied, it has already fallen below the threshold for delicate supernatural surgeries. If not, let's do some exercise. After several failures, Greet finally made up his mind. He is already an 8th level magician and 8th level priest. After some training, he can raise his warrior level 2, even to level 2. It should be quick. That night, after finishing dinner, Sirara saw Gretel running circles, wielding swords, and lifting dumbbells, exhausting himself to the point of sweating profusely. Gretel, are you going to take the path of a knight? Miss Yinlong stared at the side for a long time and asked curiously. Please subscribe. Please give me monthly votes and recommend votes. Please review the book. Asking for all kinds of things. During the double monthly voting period, please vote for me. The cat stretches out its paws. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 820. Gretel's face darkened. In the open space next to him, Bernard was carrying an iron lump that was taller than his whole body. He was squatting up and down, and after hearing this, he complained. The boss should have practiced a long time ago. His teacher, not the one in Nevis, but the one from his hometown, taught by the god of nature, has always entrusted me to let him practice well, so that he can at least run when he encounters the enemy. As a result, the boss has been busy, very, very busy. He was so busy that he couldn't use force and forced his boss to exercise. Fortunately, the boss finally figured it out. Alas, if he doesn't think about it anymore, I won't be able to beat him. He hasn't been promoted to level 9 yet. The boss is already level 8. If you keep going, you really won't be able to beat him. Sarala laughed so hard. After laughing for a long time, he wiped his face, grabbed an unedged longsword from the weapon rack, and waved it, making a whining sound. Okay, Gretel, if you really want to be a knight, I will train you. When will you be able to defeat me? When? I will die anytime, Gretel complained with a straight face. Sarala, you are a dragon. Dragon. What misconceptions do you have about your own fighting abilities? Even in the human form, no, in the elf state, you can easily defeat a 10th level or above warrior with just your physical strength. I don't dare to fight with you without looking at Bernard. It's not that he doesn't want to, it's because he knows that they can't break up. And, Sarara, what are you doing with Bernard's training sword? This sword is almost as high as my shoulder. The whole thing is wide and thick, more like an iron rod than an iron plate, and more like an iron plate than an iron sword. Do you want to train me in this kind of thing? A stick was swung at me. Even with my mage armor, I couldn't bear it. Sarala, I'm not doing it to improve my fighting ability, I'm just doing it so my hands can be steady during surgery. He explained for a long time, and Sarala finally said oh, turned the sword, and pointed straight ahead. The arm was slightly tensed, the tip of the sword was frozen, and a streak of light slid silently along the sword's spine. Greet pointed from the side. It's not easy to see if you don't see it this way, Sarara, find a fixed object, point it with the tip of your sword, and see if the tip of the sword trembles. This will make it easier to identify dash. With a swish sound, a sharp sword energy shot out from the unedged iron sword used for training. Gretel jumped back, and the sword energy drew a long straight line on the ground. Sarala took 2 steps forward, pointing the tip of the sword towards the end of the line. Hey, it's true. I'm really shaking. She became competitive and started to compete with her sword, paddling back and forth. The tip of the heavy training sword poked at the ground, and in a moment countless small holes were made, like a pockmarked face. Sarala couldn't help but pout, and said with all her strength, ouch! 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 Hey! She unknowingly exerted force on the training ground, making a deep footprint on the training ground. Greet explained softly beside him. If you don't have enough strength in your hands and can't control your arms, the weapon will tremble. If you change it to a lighter sword, it will be much better. Yeah. Sarala looked back, turned around, and waved her hand. The iron sword, which was more than half a person's height and probably weighed more than Greet, was thrown directly towards the weapon rack by her. No. If you do this, it will collapse. Before Greet could shout be careful, he saw a ray of light flowing over the iron sword, and then it fell lightly and fell silently on the weapon rack. Gretel smiled bitterly. How could I forget Sarara's racial talent, the feather falling technique, etc. She has always been as skilled at playing it as she is breathing. Throwing such an iron sword is no big deal. With a flick of her backhand, she pulled out a long sword from nowhere. It was brilliant and filled with magical aura. Sarala held it in her hand and didn't cherish it very much. She just lowered the tip of the sword like ordinary scrap metal and poked the lines on the ground. Oh! It's true. The sword doesn't shake when it's light. Look, Gretel. The tip of the sword swept across, and a straight line fell on the ground, completely parallel to the previous one, without any difference in distance. So I still have no strength in my arm. Gretel, you are too weak. She sheathed her sword or, rather, threw it into storage. Then, he raised his arm and reached out to pinch Gretel's upper arm. You have to practice hard. Gretel quickly jumped away. He raised his palms, made a pushing gesture, and explained softly. A millimeter of tremor in the hand can be transmitted to the end of the surgical instrument, and it will shake several millimeters. When doing delicate surgery, the end of the instrument cannot shake even 1 millimeter, or even 0.1 millimeter dash. To anastomose blood vessels during neurosurgery, a blood vessel with a diameter of 1 millimeter should be sutured evenly with 12 stitches. Shake out 0.1 millimeter, and the landing point of this needle must be close to that needle. Then, I dare to show you the blood vessels that have been sewn up. It is indeed useful to increase arm strength, including practicing using a needle holder to open cherries, sow grapes, and peel oranges. But, at such a refined level, it is already very difficult to reach this point solely through training. Those monsters outside the gods, how on earth did they do it? In other words, this is also the reason why neurosurgery stands proudly at the top of the contempt chain of surgery. And this time, what Gretel needs to challenge is surgical surgery. Even though he traveled through time once, even if he advanced to level 8 mage or level 8 priest, and his physical and mental powers were greatly strengthened, Greet still had no confidence in this kind of surgery. In this aspect, he is not even as good as the ordinary people in his previous life. There are specialties in the art industry, but that's all. Sarala patiently listened to his explanation, her eyes moved, and she thought carefully. When it comes to using violence to get everything done, she is good at it. She can shoot the dragon claws and make a ball of meat easily, but to do such a delicate operation. Let her think about whether there is any relevant content in the inherited memory. The more Sarala thought about it, the more she became fascinated. Gradually, the silver-blue eyes turned into pure silver, tiny scale-like patterns appeared on the cheeks, ears, and neck, and the aura on his body gradually rose. Greet quickly stepped forward and pushed her. Sarala! Wake up! Wake up! Don't be in a daze here. The important thing is, don't turn into a dragon here. There is a huge dragon's nest up there. Sarala was excited, nodded to Greet, and ran into the tower in 2 or 3 steps. Bernard took off the iron straps on his back with a clang sound, wiped the sweat, and smiled naively at Gretel. Boss, are you still practicing? Do you want me to help you stretch? Don't want. Gretel turned around and fled back to the mage tower. The barbarian's actions were neither gentle nor severe. The last time he tried to stretch his legs, he almost broke his legs. Spread your legs apart and do the splits 180 degrees. That's like hitting the ground hard. In this regard, he also said, in our tribe, only children need help from adults like this. The implication is that adults, even young warriors, have an effective training and recovery method, so adults don't need to worry about getting started. But the bones of a child's body are so weak. If you ask an adult to open his crotch and try it, the ligaments will be strained on the spot. Greet ran back. When I returned to the tower, I found that Master Norwood and Aurora, who had finished their work for the day, were smiling at the door and watching the fun. Seeing him coming back, Master Norwood took a step forward and lowered his head slightly. Boss, there may be a solution to the problem you encountered in the transformation system. Oh. Gretel perked up and immediately turned to stare at him. Master Norwood smiled. I understand one thing. You need to protect some very small things that have to be touched during the operation. So, why not add a layer of protection to them before you do it? Greet's eyes lit up, then dimmed again. He shook his head slightly. I have also thought about this method. But physical protection, I mean, gauze and the like, are too thick and will cause damage. As for magical protection, whether it is mage armor or mage hands, I don't have enough control. Mage armor can only be applied one layer to the body, allowing it to flow naturally and cover the whole body. The mage's hands can deform, and can be flattened, rolled out, and stretched into various magical instruments he wants. However, if you want to precisely protect the nerves in the vertebral foramen. He tried inserting the mage's hand into it and wrapping it with a layer of nerves. Then, after all, the hand of the mage, who was a solid person and had a size, crushed the precious and delicate spinal cord. After all, there is only so much space in the vertebral foramen, and there is really only a tiny amount of space that allows him to operate. I understand this. Master Norwood smiled softly. He took out a silver coin, activated his mental power, and saw a thin thread fluttering out from the edge of the silver coin. When it was first pulled out, it was white and bright, but after a while, it darkened visibly to the naked eye. Silver oxidizes easily. Greet muttered quietly. Mr. Norwood looked up and smiled. Yes, so magicians of the transformation system will use some small tricks to protect the most delicate parts of magic instruments. Just like this. He took out a small piece of rubber, watched as his mental power gathered, and pulled out a silver thread from the silver coin again. The silver wire grew longer and longer, and the rubber followed it, wrapping the silver wire with a layer of rubber. Greet grabbed the silver thread, touched it, and smoothed it. The rubber is thin and smooth, with a diameter of less than 0.5 millimeters, including the silver wire wrapped inside. There are no bumps from start to finish. Then I picked it with my nails, and I could pick up a layer casually, leaving a layer of debris in the gaps between my nails. Mr. Norwood smiled. Workers can wrap a layer of silver wire, but the most precise processing can only be carried out by the mental power of a magician. If it is a more delicate part, it can even be wrapped with a force field, like this dash. Another silver thread swayed out. This time, the silver wire stretched 1 foot, 2 feet, 1 meter, 2 meters, but it was always brilliant and not dim at all. When Gretel concentrated on sensing, he discovered that there was an invisible material power attached to the silver thread. How do you train to use this kind of mental power? Is there a method? Gretel took a step forward, his eyes shining and his breathing slightly rapid. Master Norwood shook his head regretfully. This is the secret method of the transformation system. I know it, but I don't have permission to teach it to others. Perhaps, boss, which archmage can you go and talk to? Anyway, you know a lot of the bosses of the Alchemy Guild, much more than I do, maybe someone will teach you the method as soon as they are happy. This isn't anything particularly secret, it's just that I don't have enough authority. Boss, it's up to you. I've already ordered over 700. After falling below 700 in late November, it is finally back this time. So happy, crying with joy. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today I grabbed 3 kilograms of green vegetables and 3 kilograms of leg meat from Ding Dong. Happy. I accidentally grabbed too much, and I grabbed an extra 10 kilograms of pork belly. I had to give it to my neighbor to free up the refrigerator space to buy chickens, ducks, and aquatic products that may be available in the future. The consequence of grabbing food was that I slept for 2 hours in the afternoon. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 821. Go to the Great Mage of the Transformation Department and ask for some tips? It was a good idea, but Greet thought it would be better to talk to the teacher first. What if the teacher has it here? What if the teacher can give him some pointers? To put it bluntly, if the teacher doesn't have the best method here, the boss the teacher can introduce to him will definitely be better than the one he can find himself. If that didn't work, it would be a waste of time at most. He could just go to the alchemy workshop to find someone. The worst that can happen is that the teacher scolds you for nothing. How many times have you been scolded by the teacher since you started? Why is there a lack of fighting ability, a lack of fighting awareness, and a way of thinking that is too close to that of ordinary people, not like a magician at all? He scolded him, and the gentle breeze blew over the hills. After receiving a scolding, what should he do when he comes back, and what should he continue to do? Just do what comes to mind. Greet sorted out the information he had recently researched and went to the top of Igor Peak early the next morning. The Lord of Thunder listened quietly to his needs, then hooked his fingertips, and a lightning ball shot out across the sky. Silvery white, bright, floating, only the size of a fist. After appearing, it immediately began to divide continuously, 1 divided into 2, 2 divided into 4, 4 divided into 8. Gretel just blinked twice, and the thunderball had already split into 32 pieces, rising and falling in front of him, constantly doing Brownian motion. That thing floating everywhere, constantly splitting, and exploding from time to time, is just like the scene where the tert-butyl lithium solution was floating everywhere in the factory when I heard the story told by the chemical engineering boss next door. Try it. Use your mental power to wrap the thunder beads and annihilate them. The Lord of Thunder said calmly. Before he finished speaking, a thunderball floated towards his door. It crackled and exploded continuously. It only floated within a foot, and it stimulated the hair on the back of Greet's neck to stand up. He felt that his eyebrows and eyelashes were standing straight up. He didn't dare to argue with the teacher, and quickly used his mental power to wrap up the thunder ball. I tried to get closer, but I didn't succeed. If I got closer, I didn't succeed. The trajectory of this cunning thunderball is too strange. Do you sincerely play hide and seek with it? Greet increased his mental strength and rushed over quickly. Okay, I won't hide this time, I will be pushed away by his power. Is this a butterfly flutter? Or swatting mosquitoes? His small amount of mental power, such a small amount of strength, can push the thunder ball to the side. Or is it the legendary observer effect? As long as you observe it, it will definitely cause changes. Gretel silently cursed and changed his tactics, expanding his mental power into a sphere and heading towards the thunder ball. Hey, it's stuck. Shrink. Wrap up. Fit. 10 centimeters and 5 centimeters, 2 centimeters and 1 centimeter. Before the outer sleeve hit the thunder ball, there was only a crackling sound, and a small stream of lightning from the thunderball exploded on the outer barrier. Gretel didn't have time to react. The lightning touched the barrier, bounced back, and hit the thunderball. The light shrank and shrunk, and the thunderball exploded on the spot. The little bit of mental energy that Greet had was torn to pieces, and the thunderball split into 2, one to the left and the other to the right, and continued to float. This, is my speed too slow? If I had wrapped it earlier, it wouldn't have exploded? Come on. Gray regained his composure and quickly used his mental power to wrap up the thunder ball on the left. This time he absorbed the experience from last time and doubled the speed of mental power contraction. However, in the face of lightning, this speed is of no use. With a crackling sound, the thunderball he tested exploded again and split into 2. Very good, now there are 3 of them, swinging around, attacking him from left to right. Moreover, the 3 thunderballs flutter in completely different patterns. Cut off. Wrap up. With a crackling sound, the thunder bead that was finally wrapped by him was cut into 17 or 18 pieces by the rapidly shrinking mental sphere. A small half was annihilated, and a large half floated out from the gap in the sphere, changing from the size of a cherry to the size of a small cherry. Then, continue to float. Keep floating. Keep floating. Hey, they are the kind of local small cherries, only a little bigger than soybeans, bright red and orange, sweet and sour, and juicy. He used to love eating them. When it's on the market in large quantities, it only costs 3 or 4 yuan per pound, so you can eat it in large quantities. The only disadvantage is that the skin is too thin and cannot be stored or transported. You can only pick it on the same day, transport it to the city on the same day, buy it on the same day, and eat it on the same day. Dare to save it until the next day, even if you put it in the refrigerator. It can also break a small half for you. As soon as his thoughts started to flow, the thunderball closest to him suddenly exploded on the bone in front of his calf, causing Gretel to scream in pain and jump up. Why is he so unlucky? I thought I was fine today, so I forgot to wear my shielding suit. Gretel didn't even dare to complain. Shaking his hands, he gave himself a healing spell and quickly speeded up. Use your spiritual power to stick to the thunder beads. Spread. Wrap them all up. Thrust inwards. Thank God, a small one was finally annihilated. Gretel quickly glanced forward and saw 17 or 18 more thunderballs the size of small cherries, intertwined into a network a foot in front of him. There were 30 or 40 larger thunder beads the size of cherries, rising and falling, filling the 5 or 6 square meters of space between him and the Lord of Thunder. Those thunder beads float leisurely, collide with each other, merge into one, and split from each other from time to time. The only good thing is that these thunder beads are all under the control of the teacher. They should not be like the legendary tert-butylithium solution, which requires you to chase them all over the factory with a mop. If you can't catch anyone, they will explode in minutes. A sound. Then, you, your colleagues, and your factory are all gone. Teacher, how many more thunder beads do I need to annihilate? Greet asked with a grimace. On the other side of the Sea of Lightning, the Lord of Thunder said in a faint voice. You need to kill them all first. You are already at level 8. As an 8th level mage, it shouldn't be difficult to annihilate several times the number of thunder beads. So, teacher, what you are saying is that my mental strength should be able to do this, but I just lack experience. Greet honestly started to attack one by one after another, catching up and intercepting them, trying hard to use up his mental energy. The first one was a round bead, the second one was also a round bead, and the third one was flat. He was so busy that he almost didn't have time to adjust it. When we got to the fourth one, as soon as the spiritual power touched it, a hole suddenly appeared in the thing and turned into the shape of a donut. Teacher, can you? Gretel screamed. On the opposite side, the Lord of Thunder said calmly. Cannot. Well, donuts are donuts, better than twisted cookies. What's more, the Lord of Thunder, as a legendary mage, was actually willing to control thunder and lightning himself and train him. To use an old saying from a previous life. Don't be unaware of your blessings. Gretel persisted and finished 3 electric donuts, sweating on his forehead. As soon as the 4th donut was placed, the thunderball changed its shape again. It changed from a hollow pancake shape to a bamboo dragonfly shape, with 3 leaves spread out, each with a curvature and spinning on its own. When the mental power touches it, it will float in different directions when it touches different points at different times. Greed chased him twice, feeling dizzy, as if he had been twisted into a propeller. Teacher, I really can't do it anymore. He shouted with a pale face. Those are propeller blades, teacher. It's a propeller blade. It's a curved surface. Curved surfaces are different from planes and spheres. To calculate the envelope of that thing, it seems that you need to use finite elements or something. It is a very troublesome mathematical tool. When processing, you need to use a 5-axis machine tool. You ask me to touch this with my bare hands and nothing but my mental power. If it's a little crooked, if it doesn't fit a little bit, it will float and explode for me to see. I really can't hold it anymore. You still haven't exercised your mental power too little, and you've been stuck at the level before level 5. The lightning in the sky suddenly disappeared, leaving only a thin wisp of silvery white, wrapping around the fingertips of the Lord of Thunder. Gretel collapsed, sweating through his clothes. He reluctantly raised his eyes and saw that the wisp of silver was actually a small snake made of electric light. The scales the size of sesame seeds spread slightly, and they were still clearly visible from a distance of 5 or 6 meters. The Lord of Thunder let out a little thunder bead from his fingertips, and the electric snake lowered its head, stretched out its forked tongue, and licked it gently. The Lord of Thunder fiddled with the little snake and raised his chin calmly. On the bookshelf behind him, a box flew over immediately, and a booklet fell in front of Gretel. "This is a gadget I made when I was young to train my mental strength. Take it back and try it out. When you light up all the gems, you can hold on for 30 minutes. You can come back later for the follow-up training method." "Okay, teacher." Gretel bowed honestly and went out holding the box. When I returned to the tower and looked carefully, I saw that the box was half a foot square, dark and oily, with no luster on the surface. There is only a circle of vine-like patterns embedded on the lid of the box. The vines are large or small, and there are more than 10 flowers in different shapes. There are 5 gems inlaid on the left and right sides of the box. The color is dull and turbid, and they don't seem to be of high quality. After reading the mental training method given by the teacher, Gretel made sure that he had mastered it, and then tried to press the first gem. The surface of the box suddenly lit up, and a thunder bead as big as a mung bean floated out from the center of the petal. Greet quickly used his spiritual power to wrap up the annihilation. The first one had just been killed, and the second one had already floated out. Then came the third, fourth, fifth. Greet rushed left and right, using his mental power to keep chasing, feeling like he was almost dead from exhaustion. After finally annihilating all the thunder beads, the second gem lit up silently, and 2 thunder beads floated out at the same time. "Gretel! What is this? Is this a magical version of Whack-A-Mole? One miss, I can't beat the gopher, and I will be bombed. Teacher, you are too cruel. This game is not fun at all. Even if you give me a happy Liancan, no, give me a Tetris. It's better than lightning Whack-A-Mole." There are 63 more positive cases in Shanghai today. The end of the lockdown is far away. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. During the double monthly voting period, please vote as much as possible. The cat is doing somersaults and rolling here. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 1,500 starting coins reward. Congratulations to everyone for collecting another 10,000 rewards. I will pay them back in turn after paying back the monthly tickets and adding more. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 822. Gretel, what are you playing at? A delicate face that looks both happy and angry pokes out of the doorframe. Gretel didn't look back, raised his chin slightly, and pointed at the box in front of him. "This. Hey. I want to play too." Cyrilla jumped over happily. Pick up the box, look left and right, and without hesitation, poke at the first gem. A dragon. It would be nice if she didn't dig out the gems. Gretel sighed slightly and watched as Cyrilla spread her fingers apart and pounced on the thunderballs as if she were playing the piano. Snapped. Destroy it. Snapped. Destroy it. Snapped. Destroy it. The thunderballs in the first level appeared one by one, from slow to fast, from rising straight up, to floating and wandering. The slowest one takes 2 to 3 seconds, the fastest one takes 0.5 seconds, and the duration is about 10 seconds. Gretel has practiced for 3 rounds, and every time he is in a hurry at the final stage, sweating on his forehead. And Sarah's fingers were flying, pressing 1, extinguishing 1, pressing 1, extinguishing 1, relaxed and happy, completely playing. Hey, Gretel, this is fun. Cyrilla's eyes were bright. What to do next? Press the second button. Yes, press the second button. You take your time and play while I go read the booklet the teacher gave me again. One thing to say, the small notebook thrown by the Lord of Thunder and the electric ball whack-a-mole game box are really effective. Gretel only practiced for a week, and from being in a hurry at the first level to steadily passing the third level. To be fair, the playability of this game box made by Lord of Thunder is quite good. In the first level, there were only 1 Thunderball, but in the second level, there were 2, 3, and 4 Thunderballs shooting out. Merging, mutually exclusive, and rapidly rotating around each other, there are always various kinds of things happening every time. Renovate the patterns, never repeat them, and capture the essence of random generation. The reaction is just a little slower and it can blow you in the face. After Greed has mastered the contents of the first chapter of the booklet, he will be able to calm down and press them to death one by one. Even if the Thunderballs are intertwined and surrounded by each other, only a millimeter apart, he can still use his mental power to steadily penetrate, wrap, and annihilate. What does it mean to enter the space without thickness? This is it. By the third level, the Thunderball is no longer spherical but pie-shaped, fan-shaped, spiral-shaped, and various geometric shapes. After Greed struggled to survive this level, the 4th gem lit up, and a feather flew out from the petals. Feathers. The feather shaft is curved, the barbules are one on the left and one on the right, staggered and bifurcated, and the feather branchlets are slender, weak, and wispy. Gretel tried to use his mental power to wrap the entire feather, and it would still explode for you to see. If he wrapped every small piece of barbule, it would still explode. He had to quickly extend it and wrap every down in the blink of an eye, so that it could be quietly annihilated. Go down. I don't know how many feathers were blown off before I finally managed to get one. Greed's forehead was already covered with a thin layer of hot sweat. At this time, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 in front of me. 9 pieces, 10 pieces, thousands of pieces, all exploded on the body and disappeared. Fortunately, I wore a protective suit. Foresight.jpg. Greed wiped his sweat with his mental power, turned off the 4th gem, lit it up again, and tried again. This time, he succeeded in annihilating it when the 10th feather floated out. Try again. No, the results have declined, it's the 15th film. Try again. Oh, Greed. You're about to be fried. Gretel hid in the shielding suit, letting the lightning feathers crackle on his body, and showed a helpless smile to Cyrilla. In any case, after 2 weeks of hard training, Gretel's mental power utilization level has improved a lot. Although I still can't pass the 4th level, there is only the last period left, the period when the feathers are densest and flutter the weirdest. Now that Master Norwood is using his mental power to pull out the silver wire, he can also use his mental power to pull the glass solution and attach it quickly and evenly. The two of them work together to make a shielding suit in just 1 hour. Then, wrap it up and continue to fry. A shielding suit can last about 2 days under such high-intensity training. It was very tragic. After 2 weeks of hard training, Greed finally stood in front of the operating table again. Lying forward in front of him, a fat pig weighing 200 kilograms and ready for slaughter was tied up. Greed personally held the scalpel and made an incision about 4.5 to 5 centimeters long along the horizontal lines at the base of the fat pig's neck. After incising the dermal layer, carefully use a mithril knife that can activate treatment at any time to cut through the deep tissue layer by layer until the loose connective tissue under the platysma muscle. Gretel, what are you going to do today? Cyrilla stood opposite the operating table, handing him the scalpel, controlling the mage's hand to pull the hook, and adjusting the direction of the shadowless lamp, while asking curiously. Gretel raised his head slightly, and under the mask and surgical cap, he bent his eyes towards her. I'll give it a try and use mental power to guide the protective energy to cover the brachial plexus. If the brachial plexus can handle it, the spinal nerve roots should also be able to handle it. Oh. Cyrilla answered in a low voice, then bared her teeth and made a face. When she was working as Greet's assistant, she memorized the atlas, and the brachial plexus stuff was a mess. Under the skin, wandering between the deep layers of muscles, just looking at it makes me dizzy, and I absolutely don't want to carry it. Gretel wants to challenge this thing? This is very troublesome. Gretel was unhurried. Incision, traction, and blunt dissection were performed along the platysma muscle upward and downward, reaching the midpoint of the posterior edge of the sternocleidomastoid muscle above and the upper edge of the clavicle below. While separating, he carefully spread out his mental power and moved forward slightly. Following the guidance of the spiritual power, the mage's hands deformed and wandered, wrapping the skin branches of the supraclavicular nerve tightly inside. Sclera, electrode. Okay. There are wires trailing behind the two electrode needles, accurately positioned on the neurocutaneous branches. Greet stared closely at the landing point of the electrode needle, stretched out his mental power, and tried to feel the current. Oh, no. Very good. Cyrilla, I'll continue cutting. If you see these nerves, use the electrode needle to probe them. Get ready, let's see if my protection is in place. No problem. Cyrilla is gearing up. Gretel calmed down and incised the neck fat pad along the posterior edge of the sternocleidomastoid muscle to fully free the omohyoid muscle in the fat pad. Use the hand of the mage to pinch the transverse cervical artery and vein deep in the fat pad and cut them off. The deep tissue is separated, the upper end exceeds the intersection of the phrenic nerve and the C5 nerve, and the lower end reaches the tendon insertion point of the anterior scalene muscle. The anterior scalene muscle is exposed on the medial side, and the phrenic nerve running on its surface is freed and protected, and the middle oblique muscle is exposed on the lateral side. Angular muscles. Free the C5 nerve root to protect the phrenic nerve that runs obliquely on the surface of the C5 nerve root, as well as the branches from the phrenic nerve to C5 or the small branches from C5 to the phrenic nerve. Cyrilla. Here it comes. The two electric shock needles danced on each nerve following Greet's guidance. Phrenic nerve, C5 nerve root, C6, C7, C8, T1. Part of the ventral branch of the fifth cervical nerve, together with the ventral branch of the sixth cervical nerve, forms the anterior trunk of the brachial plexus. The ventral branch of the seventh cervical nerve forms the middle trunk of the brachial plexus, and the ventral branch of the eighth cervical nerve and the ventral branch of the brachial plexus. Most of the thoracic nerves form the posterior trunk of the brachial plexus. Cyrilla looked dazed beside her. When I memorized the map, I could memorize it anyway. When I used the knife, I had no idea where I had cut it. Muscle. Blood vessel. Nerve. She didn't even know which piece of meat the retractor was pulling up. The only thing that is certain is that, well, this piece of meat is quite thin, and this piece of meat is a bit fat. Cyrilla calmed down, decided not to worry about what was what, and followed Greet's movements closely. As Greet separated, Cyrilla controlled the electrode needle and dropped it to test. No problem, still no problem. Gretel, you are great. Gretel smiled at her, and the surgical instruments continued to fly. Cut, separate, protect, cut, separate, protect. Ah, it's so secret, why are there so many? She complained softly. Gretel did not speak, but used the mage's tricks to die the muscles, instructing Cyrilla to open up the muscle bundles of the scalenes one by one. Deep in the scalene muscle, some nerve fibers of the anterior, middle, and posterior trunks of the brachial plexus are intertwined to form a plexus. Greet gathered his energy slightly. The spiritual power spreads out like running water, leading the protective power of the mage's hand to flow on the nerve fiber plexus. Nothing is missing, nothing is left out. After the teacher's devilish training, after the exercise of covering 3 or 4 feathers with mental power in the blink of an eye, each of the flying feathers is just a brachial plexus, a trivial matter. If necessary, I can also cover all larger muscle bundles and large and small blood vessels in an instant. Do it again. Greet's scalpel flew and he dissected the left pig leg all the way to the pig's trotter, as well as various side branches of the radial nerve, ulnar nerve, and median nerve. After dissecting the left side, then dissect the right side. After finishing the exercise happily, I stretched my arms and stretched greatly. The operation actually took 4 hours. Even if most of the time, mental power and mage's hands are used instead of surgical instruments, and there is no need to bend down all the time, it is still very hard for this old back. Next time, try using your mind to channel healing energy to wrap around the nerves and blood vessels. On the one hand, it can block the blade and rongeur, and on the other hand, even if it is slightly bruised, it can be treated in time. Cyrilla, thank you. Today's work is perfect. That's for sure. I'll help you. Moss. Moss. Do me a favor and carry the pig to the kitchen. 2 invisible servants floated over in response, lifted the pig and left. After a while, Bernard rushed in and complained. Boss, next time you have an operation, can you feel sorry for the thing, or can you cure it and then kill it? I could have stewed the trotters and pig's trotters, but for all this, I can only stew the meat. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. During the double period, continue to circle around and ask for monthly tickets. Our community finally distributed the 6th batch of supplies. A bottle of alcohol-free rinse gel, and a small bottle of alcohol-free rinse gel. Hee hee. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 823. If you can use mental power to protect the brachial plexus, you can use mental power to protect the spinal cord and the nerves extending from the vertebral foramen. The next day, Greet continued his efforts and performed another scoliosis correction surgery. This time, Greet incised the skin and separated it layer by layer to expose the outside of the facet joint. Then, under the guidance of the spirit of the contract, spiritual power is unfolded to cover the spinal cord and related nerves. Get to work. The CT scan has been completed before, a virtual 3-dimensional image has been generated, and it has been calculated in which direction and angle each vertebra needs to be twisted to straighten the spine. Gretel gave an order, and translucent colored lights and shadows lit up around the experimental dog. This is the silent phantom released by the tower spirit. The corrected image was released based on the horizontal plane of the 7th cervical vertebra of the experimental dog. Where should you go after correction in the 1st quarter, where should you go in the 2nd quarter, where should you go in the 3rd quarter? At the same time, bright lines are used to draw out thin horizontal and vertical cubes so that the surgeon can check the angles. Tailing is really convenient. Greet sighed comfortably. These planning and guidance tasks would have been the work of the TNG surgical robot in its previous life. The TNG navigation system is used to set the screw channels of each vertebral body. After positioning the robot, tap and screw the pedicle screws into the pedicle needle entry point. Then, titanium rods were placed between the screws, the nuts were tightened, and thoracic spine fusion was performed. The positioning of the human eye cannot be so accurate, and the human hand cannot make holes in the vertebrae with sufficient force and be precise and accurate at the same angle. But with the help, planning, and positioning of the tower spirit, these are not a problem. Cut off part of the protruding vertebral body, remove part of the soft tissue, and twist the vertebral body with the hands of a powerful mage. Therapeutic techniques are used to guide the bone to grow and reset, and to guide the growth and filling of the soft tissue inside. Guide the surrounding muscles that are already deformed to grow where they need to and strengthen where they need to, so as not to stretch the spine too much. These tasks have been done very well in the past 6 months. Now, just think about protecting your nerves. With the coverage of mental power, there is no such thing as injury to nerve roots, damage to the dura mater, injury to the spinal cord, leakage of cerebrospinal fluid, under the coverage and protection of mental power, and under the advanced protection of the hands of the mage, it does not exist. After the operation was completed, Greet looked at the regular, normal physiological curvature of a spine in front of him and sighed comfortably. He asked the tower spirit to record the images, took X-ray photos from all sides, used healing techniques to heal the tissue layer by layer, and released the tranquility technique. The dog opened his eyes, sniffed around, and jumped off the operating table. Very good, no limp. Moss, take it back. Don't hurt it. The operation is completed, but we still need to follow up to see if there is any postoperative bleeding. No, with treatment, there will be no postoperative bleeding. We also need to see if there is any back pain, lower limb pain, or incontinence. And other complications too. A good beginning is half the battle. Starting with the black and white dog, who looked like a border collie, Greet performed 20 surgeries in one go. Among the 20 cases, 18 cases were completely cured, with their body length increasing by 3 to 4 centimeters compared with pre-operation, and the Cobb angle returning to 4 degrees from 35 degrees to 40 degrees. The other 2 cases included 1 case of back pain and 1 case of hind leg pain. In short, they were both within the tolerable range. Greet wrote the paper with confidence. It was first presented to the teacher for review, and then sent to Mrs. Alva of the Charm Control Department and Archmage Edgar of the Necromancy Department, 1 copy each. Look, for this project, animal testing has been successful. Next, you can apply for a clinical trial. Once the clinical trial is passed, you can consider surgery on the person on the other side. How to notify the other party, how to communicate with the other party, whether to use patients from the country, or whether the Count of Ostend on the other side will find the cases and find ways to send them over. This, you can decide. Mrs. Alva received the paper and rushed over immediately. Not only did she rush over by herself, she also brought Archmage Edgar from the Necromancy Department and Archmage Bennett from the Medical Branch. Did you really do it? Are you sure there is no problem? Is the success rate so high? Can you do it again and show us? Archmage Edgar's cheeks were pale and thin, and his eyes were as red as 2 briquettes burning. He didn't ask any questions, but his eyes were bright and he stared at Gretel without turning around. Obviously, for this great mage of the necromancy system, or in other words, for the magicians of the necromantic system, being able to watch a difficult operation requires even sharpening one's head to get in. Only Archmage Bennett shrank back and remained silent. He has a good relationship with Mrs. Alva, or in other words, with the Charm Control Department, so last time a magician from the Charm Control Department attacked the Necromancer Department, he was invited here for treatment. The problem is, you didn't say you were here to see Master Nordmark perform surgery. A layman watches the excitement, while an expert watches the door. We therapists watch other people perform surgeries. We must apply and obtain consent in advance. We cannot just watch casually. What's more, as a half-supervisor, I came to see whether his operation method and success rate were as stated in the paper. Greet smiled at him, not caring, and led them in. First, they were shown the preoperative images, postoperative images, and surgical procedures of 20 dogs, and then took them to see the dogs on site. It doesn't matter if you want to do a spot check or if you want to check it from beginning to end, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I completed these operations in a down-to-earth manner, and the operation records were carefully written. Any one of them can withstand investigation, so don't be afraid. MRS Alva flipped through them one by one. The dog's length, weight, preoperative images, postoperative images, bleeding volume, blood pressure, each record is consistent. Well, at least it doesn't look like it was copied from one copy to that one. She threw out a charming animal, then squatted in front of the cage, stroking the head of an experimental dog, cooing, cooing. As for what I communicated with Guza, Gretel chose to ignore it. Anyway, he is just a fake nature mage, and he has failed in all aspects of natural communication. Archmage Edgar was holding a surgical record, with a preoperative image on the left and a postoperative image on the right, looking at it in ecstasy. He muttered in his mouth and kept gesticulating with his hands. This, should be like this, if we become skeleton soldiers, if we become zombies, if we become abominations. Greed passed by expressionlessly. You know that the purpose of necromancers' research on surgery is probably to make undead creatures. The problem is that undead creatures don't grow naturally, and you can't guide their skeletal muscles to grow. Only Archmage Bennett carefully flipped through the two surgical records, asked a few questions that he was more confused about, and then stood quietly on the side, looking like he was avoiding suspicion. When they met 2 years ago, he was at level 10 and Greet at level 6, now he is still at level 10 and Greet is at level 8. In 2 years, God knows if he can break through to level 11. Greet might already be at level 10. This kind of person is determined to build a good relationship and must not be offended. I mean, do you really want to check his thesis information? Instead, Greet smiled at him and led him outside and into the animal breeding room outside the mage tower. There are 10 dog cages lined up in a row, and in each cage is a large dog. The back is bare and hairless, and the deformity of the spine can be seen at a glance. Just pick one? Whichever one you pick, I will use it for the experiment. Alas, since the development of rabies vaccines began, the number of stray dogs in Neva seems to have been significantly reduced. At the very least, stray dogs that are large enough to bite children to death on a one-on-one basis are no longer very common walking around on the road. Putting it this way, I feel that his hospital has made a great contribution to the safety of the citizens of Nevis. Under the watchful eyes of the 3 archmages, Greet remained steady and performed another scoliosis correction surgery. MRS Alva watched the dog jump off the operating table, fly out with its tail between its legs, showing no signs of paralysis, and let out a long sigh. At least animal experiments are really no problem. If it can be successful on patients, we can talk to the Count and ask him to send his son over for treatment. She snapped her fingers, and some magic was activated. The dog stumbled back and plunged into her arms. MRS Alva stroked the dog's spine, then touched the 4 legs one by one, raised her head and said, "By the way, Mage Nordmark, can patients who have received treatment still take the night route?" "I don't know about this, and I haven't studied it." Greet spread his hands and said. "However, even after surgical treatment, patients who have been deformed will have lower bone and muscle strength than normal people, and even internal organs will be compressed for a long time. Whether high-intensity exercise can be performed requires an accumulation of enough cases before we can draw a conclusion." "Then can you continue researching?" MRS Alva hesitated to speak. Greet already smiled. "Originally, this technology can only benefit a specific person, which is very wasteful. Now that it has been invented, I want to think about how to make it serve more people." A week later, Bishop Salem, the Bishop of War who had interacted with Gretel in the DC defibrillation project, once again walked into the Archbishop's office holding the newly published paper. According to previous research, scoliosis exists in a wide range of soldiers. Especially among soldiers who use one-handed weapons, the prevalence of scoliosis in the coronal plane reaches 23.85%, and the prevalence of abnormal curvature in the sagittal plane of the spine, as high as 35.7%. Relatively speaking, the prevalence of scoliosis among magicians of the same age is less than 10%. With age, the scoliosis of warriors also increases, but the scoliosis of knights is relatively low. Therefore, it is speculated that early intervention and treatment can make warriors more likely to progress. The archbishop sighed and rubbed his forehead. This Nordmark mage always comes up with new tricks every time. The above data on scoliosis in warriors comes from research on the spinal conditions of athletes such as table tennis, rhythmic gymnastics, volleyball, rugby, and weightlifting. Sci. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Please double the monthly pass. Today we were notified that according to the latest policies of the doorman and the neighborhood committee, the express delivery and group purchase items have arrived at the doorman. The courier informed the residents that they can go downstairs to pick them up. Although I can't leave the community yet, I'm already halfway through it, amen. I hope that the nucleic acid test will be completed today and there will be good results tomorrow. Don't start the 14 days again.